Welcome to the latest episode of the Low Production High Value Show, a show for and about entrepreneurs.
Welcome to the latest episode. Today's guest is Natalie Serkin, founder of Collective IQ, a network of 350 plus top-tier creatives operating under one bold principle: only say yes when it's a hell yes. After being told she was too honest to succeed, Natalie walked away from traditional agencies and built a marketing powerhouse rooted in transparency, autonomy, and serious results. In this episode, she reveals how saying no to misaligned work unlocked the freedom to do her best work, and how the collective model could be a blueprint for the future of marketing. Welcome. It's great to have you join us. I've been looking forward to this for a while. We're going to jump right in. And you've gone from traditional agency to founding and growing a collective of experts and creatives. And I want to sort of jump back in time to when the switch turned on for you to say, it's either time to go or time to try something different. Was it I use the word switch, but was it the turning of a switch, or was it a gradual feeling that overcame you?
I'm going to say it was a immediate switch turn, but it was 10 years in the making before I finally launched the
Was there
company.
something dramatic that turned the switch after 10 years of mulling it
Yes.
over?
It was when I had, I can't remember who in the agency tell me that they couldn't put me in front of clients because I was too honest. They couldn't have me risk telling the clients the truth.
Well, one, that is dramatic, but two, I mean, I'm not going to accuse this person who I don't know that they were asking you to lie, but now in an era where transparency and authenticity are these catchphrases that we're hearing so often, was it a matter of you were going to be honest and properly setting their expectations, or telling them no, that won't work, or what was the substance of the honesty?
It's not the only time I've heard that. The honesty was providing the client with with a challenge and then providing the solution. And they didn't want to explain to the client what the problem was. We wanted to be all smoke and mirrors and pretend everything was great when it wasn't. And my perspective as a solutions person was, let's provide the solution. So here's the challenge. Let's tell them what the solution is and what we're going to do about it and how we're going to make it happen. So in my mind, there was no reason to not be honest with the client. As you know, most agencies, the only people in the building that are usually very straightforward are the production teams. So I guess I fell into that category, even though technically I wasn't production, because I just tell it like it is. Like, oh, you can make that deadline or you can't. And this is, if you miss this, then we messed up. Um, and I had a CEO at the time, I won't say which agency,
Mhm.
who mandate was to not be honest and to provide smoke and mirrors. And I didn't understand why we thought that our clients weren't very smart and that they would believe these fabricated points of view. And so I literally at that moment, and this is as a junior, made my mandate that I believe that somewhere I would find to work in my life where honesty and integrity would be valued, because I don't know any other way. I'm not capable of BS, and I have no filter. What I think comes right out of my mouth, and that somewhere need to be welcomed in my career. And I believe that it would be, as opposed to it being a negative.
When you talk about like problems and solutions, was some of the problems, so let's say you have an engagement with a client and the implementation and delivery, or like whatever they tasked you to do, gets underway, but then you hit a roadblock or an issue or whatever. That's what was being you were being tasked to gloss over and not admit that, oh, behind the scenes,
Correct.
we've hit, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's rosy. It's all good. And
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. But I'm gonna take it a step further and say, extrapolate on it, that I feel like I spent my entire career when I was working for other people prior to being on client side with junior account people that were tasked with saying the client is always right and we don't want to say no to the client. And so we just have to take what they ask for and make it happen. And my perspective was, and still is, and I don't know where I became so full of myself, if you will, thinking that this is the way it had to be. But I really struggle with what's real versus perception. And I think that, and that's where the part of marketing that I struggle with, because sometimes marketers are making perception to turn into someone's reality.
Mhm.
But I'm really stuck on that reality is reality. We should just deal with that first
It's
before
the
we worry
same
about
reality for all of us
exceptions.
versus,
Yes. So I think and I think that my concern for the honesty was reinforced over and over and over again when I was running studio as an example. It's the end of the line before it goes to production. And so if there's a big mess of what happens from client brief all the way through the whole process before it ends up in studio, it would be a challenge that all of a sudden the studio team has to fix the problems that weren't managed ahead of time before it got to studio. So for instance, even now, one of the examples we always use in Collective IQ is that if we did a whole campaign concept and the client comes back and says, okay, well, I don't like blue, make it all pink. That I think the typical scenario in agency structure was that you'd have a junior account person would say, oh, okay, well, you don't like pink, you want it blue? Okay, no problem. We'll make it all blue and by tomorrow at noon. And then they come back to the agency, which are filled with all these amazing, smart people, and say, okay, client says make it all blue and do it by tomorrow at noon. And the creative team were like, what? Like, what's wrong with pink? What's their concern? What is the issue? Like, how do maybe we have a different solution. And also we can't do what you just committed to for noon tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I was the honest person who would say, well, let's just call the client, explain that we can't do that. So what is their actual problem? And let's provide the solution. And then we'll tell them when we can do that effectively. And then they're like, oh, no, we can't say no to the client. We can't do that. So
maybe the client
make it all
needs
blue and figure out, so
needs
find as
blue.
many people as you need to and as many whatever, and somehow work all night and you're all going to have it done by tomorrow noon. That was the way it was in every agency that I worked in.
Well, it's a very jaded thing to say, but a friend of mine who was in management consulting said, sometimes you just need to be one step ahead of the client. And that speaks to this to what you're saying about this lack of honesty, transparency, this, kind of, I'll just call it client manipulation.
Yes, 100%. I was trying not to say that, but you covered it.
Yeah, it just makes me cringe. I won't name it was one of the big 5 consultancies. I was on a project with them. I was not staff with them. And I remember there being a summer student being billed out to the client at $100 an hour. And they were taking notes in a meeting, and they were between their 3rd and 4th year of university. And I just thought that's criminal.
Wow.
That's what they're being billed to the client when they were a junior person taking notes. And now in the age of AI, the meeting notes would be taken by a person. But I just thought, good heavens, it just left a bad taste in my mouth. But the thing is, that's the proverbial no one got fired for hiring Microsoft or buying Microsoft. And I guess no one got fired for hiring this big 5 consultancy.
So one of the things you asked about, like, was it a moment or a switch? The big agency that I worked in, one of the ones where I really had this big eye-opening experience, the CEO and I really didn't see eye to eye on very many things. And I was the era of where there wasn't a lot of women leaders at the time. So even though if I was doing great work, I was recognized by the other agency heads within the company, but the main center person just didn't see me as an equal at all. I felt like every time I walked in his office, I was being treated like a secretary. And so when I left there, which I left by choice, I made a point of talking to him and saying that why I was leaving. And he said, well, you need to learn to lie. If you don't lie, you're never going to succeed in this business. And I said, no, I'm determined to believe that my honesty level and integrity will be appreciated somewhere. And that became my mission.
Mantra.
Yeah.
It's sad to hear that in this day and age that wasn't like a core belief by someone.
Well, I'm going to say it's 25 years ago, but
well, to me, that's not that long ago, really.
But I'm going to say I think that I have moments now at this stage of my career and this age that, and you already said it, that honesty, integrity are valued. And I feel like sometimes it's because of my level of experience or age, but I don't think it's really that. I think that's part of it. But I think the world as society, with the amount of transparency that's available now, is much more geared for them. It's really appreciated. Leading a business for 9 years where that is our mandate is We have more like-minded people to be surrounded with that are the collaborators and well as what are technically our clients. So
Well, and every year the Edelman Trust Barometer comes out, and it has tracked the decline of trust by people in organizations. And unless we're doing something to offset that, then there's a problem. But the switch has turned. You bid farewell to that agency. Did you have the idea for the collective even before you left, or it was more like, I'd rather not be here and think through what I want to do after? Or like, talk about that transition.
Yeah. So more it was that every place I went to, when I left the big agency, I went back to being a designer on a brand. And then at the same time, I started consulting with another agency, helping them set up a creative department. And I kept seeing the same patterns in every agency. That agency would go up for review every 2 or 3 years. The people that we serviced to death were never part of the review process. So the work didn't stand up well on its own. And the new shiny agency could do all these great things. And so we'd switch, we get canceled, and then they'd hire a new agency, or we'd be the new agency hired, and the hamster wheel would continue. And I thought, well, it's because the work is more about service now, not about the work anymore. And so how do we get focused on why we're actually being hired, which is for the work and for what our subject matter expertise is, and how do we get back to that? So that sort of became my mission, was how do I take the honesty, integrity with focusing on the work and why I got into the industry, and how do I bring that back, and how do we treat people well so that they're able to create an environment for them to do the best work possible. So when I put in process and systems at agencies, I restructured 13 different ones and then 3 on client side. It was about putting in a communication process that allowed the creative teams the opportunity and information and time and environment to do their best work. So it always was focused on championing for the work. And I thought, well, since I can't find any agency, I keep going to the agency hoping this is the one that's going to do what I think they can do. And it never worked out. I was like, I just got to do this on my own. So I'm going to say pretty early on, I knew I was going to have my own agency, but I thought I was told I'm not supposed to be dealing directly with clients. And I'm really a creative person and I want to be the client person. So I need a new business person. So took me a lot of years. I tried a few different people and a couple of little things I started on the side to find somebody that would be my new business person, because I thought I needed someone to open those doors, because I didn't think it was me, because I was behind the scenes in most agencies, other than the big pitches where I present what half the agency was doing or a third of the agency. I didn't think that was me. And so I kept working at places and setting up work schedules where I only worked 4 days a week or something. So I had one day to keep working on my own thing or trying to figure it out until only thing that kept delaying me was that I didn't have that new business person. I kept looking for them.
Well, to sort of tie back to the whole trust and transparency and being too honest, if you're going to have a client where you're going to do recurring projects for, or you're going to have a retainer-based client, trust has to be embedded in it, and honesty, because it's not just transactional. They are trusting you with their brand and their revenue and a whole bunch of things. It seems logical, but
it seems logical. Well, let me give a point of view. I was at several agencies when we merged with other agencies. And every single time the agency would buy another agency, or the multinational that owned it would buy because they wanted to consolidate accounts or something. And within 6 to 8 months, the key people that came from that agency either left on their own volition, or in most cases were restructured out.
Yep.
So then within another 3 to 6 months, the client was gone. And I'm like, well, what did you just buy?
Yeah.
Like you paid all this money for an agency because you wanted their client list. And then all the relationship people who are the reason why that client was with that agency have now left. Most of them you pushed out the door. So now you paid for nothing, and you got nothing because you let the reasons why the client was there, which is the relationship part, go. And I just felt like I had a lot of moments where I shake my head a lot and I'd be like, oh, I'm young and in the industry, what do I know? And even when I wasn't young anymore and had lots of experience, I kept saying, well, the people that make a lot more money than me seem to be making decisions that I don't understand. So they must be smarter than me because they figured out how to make a lot of money making really bad decisions.
I remember I worked at Bell Canada. Their agency of record at the time was Cassette, and then they went out to the street and made everybody, put the word out, we're entertaining bids from new agencies, and Cassette lost. They were no longer the incumbent, and then the winning agency poached a whole bunch of people from Cassette because they knew the account. And it's like, so if Bell was looking for fresh thinking, or the agency didn't want, like, obviously the agency won for fresh thinking or repositioning or whatever, maybe they were just going to, suck the brains of the account people and then, move on. But it's just, to your point.
I was at said agency when
Okay.
called,
Do I have that right?
and yes, and wouldn't keep it for very long either.
Sorry?
At least the one I was at when that happened the first time it left Cossette, we didn't keep the account for very long.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the client is to some degree the one that suffers because of the disruption and momentum lost and things like that. But
on the flip side, I'm just going to interject with a thought.
Sure.
Well, then you have big brand that hires agency makes a custom agency. We know which one I'm talking about, that shut down about a year and a half ago, a custom agency. And then at some point they decide that that's not good enough anymore. And they just leave and go to another agency to set up another custom one for them. And I'm like, but if the relationship was strong enough, why couldn't you just fix what you've built together, as opposed to just keep shopping it around? So
like to make it less transactional, more collaborative, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but to your point about the customization or the custom component, is there some challenges there from the standpoint of, there's nothing being repeated? Yes, it might be innovative, but if you're starting from scratch with every new activity, it's costly, and not all clients are willing to, like, well, we're flying to the moon today and tomorrow it's Mars. And so it's like a new investment. We have to build new tools, or like, it's just too much new all the time.
The other thing that you're saying that made me think about something is retainers. So we've never tried to be a retainer agency. We've been focused on project based, because we're relationship focused. So if the relationship is there, we're investing in the people and we're enjoying the relationship together. Our relationship with our people is as important as our relationship with the clients, equally, 100%. If anything, I'm probably more protective of my people, realistically. But you have to earn it every single time for a project. If you're a retainer, like we get projects from some of our clients where they'll say, well, we feel like we're just being treated like every other client at this point, so we're not happy. So can you take this project and redo it for us, because we're not getting what we need our agency, because we've now got a group, an account team who doesn't even know who we are, or the people on the entire account, the turnover is so big, we're having to rebrief everyone and re-onboard all the time. And so I feel like in a project-based situation, you have to earn every project, which means you have to stay focused on that relationship, as opposed to just expecting it and demanding it to come your way.
Well, I think that's valid. I mean, and not to make this about me, but what we've chosen to, or what I've done with Volterra, what we've chosen to do, we are retainer based. We've found this sweet spot between, I have people that work for me. It's not me as a solopreneur, but we're not an agency of record that has to rebid every 3 years. And although we are creative, we're not focused on creative projects, and that's not meant to belittle or diminish or disrespect the creative work that you do.
Yeah.
We are more, because the way I position is social's always on. It's every day.
Correct.
And so there's an element of operations. There's an element of ongoing planning. We're kind of this, I like to say, we have a seat at the table with their strategic comms and PR and whatever. So there's more of an operational lens to it. And then we overlay that with paid campaigns. And so with that in mind, if we're that much more embedded into the operations, it tends to suit a retainer. And so, knock wood, it's working so far.
No, I agree. And I think that situation absolutely lends itself to that. And we do have some clients where we run a similar situation, but it's very different than a typical agency retainer, where you commit all these projects and all this money and they build this whole team around it, or they claim they build a whole team around it. And then it's just, I think people get very comfortable with that retaining.
Oh, I think there's a lot of validity to that. So when I was working for a major financial institution through my company, but I, sat across the table from a number of the agencies that were on retainer and or under contract. and they had monthly retainers, but there was oftentimes people were going around the keeper of the retainer trying to find new pockets of revenue, and there was also lots of internal questioning of, are they delivering value? And so to your point, like, you have to be cognizant of always validating or ensuring that one, you're delivering value, and then confirming the client sees value in what you're delivering. And if you get complacent, don't be surprised if the contract doesn't get renewed.
Agreed. Agreed.
We'll be back in a moment. And now, a word from our sponsor. Social media has become an imperative for almost every business. Discover how to successfully implement an effective social media strategy that is supported and integrated throughout every part of your organization with this essential book from our host, Andrew Jenkins, Social Media Marketing for Business, Scaling an Integrated Social Media Strategy Across Your Organization, is now available from Amazon or KoganPage.com. Now, back to the show.
One thing I'm curious about, so you're a creative first.
Yeah.
But you've got a natural for processes and improving efficiency and so on. But what was it like to become more sales oriented, or is that still a challenge, or if it's not, wasn't your nature? And I don't know if it is or isn't, but I'm just curious. Talk to me about the sales
Um,
side of it.
so the sales side of it, I worked retail all through high school, and a bit before my family had their own business.
Okay.
So that's pretty hardwired in terms of exposure to customer service and salesy. But I really didn't think of myself as a salesperson, and I still don't. I don't sell. I just build really great relationships with people I enjoy
Yeah.
communicating with. And it's very rewarding for both. And when it's not, then I'm not doing it.
But I think,
So,
well, I came up in retail too, but to your point, being able to walk up to a stranger and assist them, and without any reservations, and to build rapport and trust in just a matter of minutes, I think pays a dividend for the rest of your life. And I think everyone should be in sales for a little bit, just for the sake of having a better understanding of like interaction with people, and to move away from purely it's transactional to this is about building trust and rapport and
I
relationships.
agree. I'm going to add a layer to that that might surprise you.
Okay.
The two skill sets that I think have helped me navigate the way that I operate in the business world are one, what you just said in terms of retail experience. I worked at, I think, 4 different retail stores when I was in high school. And I went to school for the arts for high school, and was a visual art major and I had to have two disciplines. So I had visual arts and drama was an improv focus. So what I think, and I just came to this sort of epiphany a couple of years ago about this, but I think that being able to be in front of people and speak your mind, to think quickly for a solution, to think quickly on your feet, and to act and commit to it has shaped the entire way that I've managed and worked in my whole career, because those are the skills that you need on a basic that you learn from improv. And so when I think about how the way my brain functions and how quickly I can pick things, commit and run with it, and be able to evaluate all the other options, it comes from that for sure. So
Well, we're similar in that regard. So I have a degree in film production, and I worked in the industry before and after my degree. And people would ask me like, so what do you take away from it? And I would talk about in production management, you're looking at a script and you're thinking through all the components and elements and pieces that need to be involved, and mapping out where and when they need to be involved, and to be able to basically visualize not just the finished product, but all the things that have to fall into place, the resources, the people, the timing, and so on, all just derived from what's on a written page. And so I look at a business plan or a brief or just a statement of work, whatever, and like the wheels start turning. Do I have it down to a science? Absolutely not. But it's something the experience, the historical experience, I value tremendously. And like you said, to think on your feet
exactly.
is important. So you leave agency, you do a combination of embedded in agency while you're nurturing your ideas, and you're in a sense you're validating some of your assumptions. When does it really sort of turn tide for you, and get rolling as a
Um,
collective?
I had gone on client side at one of Canada's largest banks, as you know, and um, I
What
did
does
not
it
enjoy
rhyme
it.
with? I'm just kidding.
I did not enjoy it. I really, I would say I spent a lot of my career trying to find place with least amount of politics. I didn't want to deal with politics all the time. I just not because of the straightforwardness. It's a landmine without the politics. And I stepped the landmines all the time. And bank side was, they hired me because I came from agency side. I know I'd come in and change things quickly that would take years to do on bank side.
Mhm.
And I didn't enjoy the politics at all. I didn't enjoy how slow moving it was. It was a great gig for a little while because I just had a new baby and I could actually make it home in time for daycare pickup and see my child before they went to bed. So that part was good. So the banking hours really was a thing, and people didn't at the time, and people didn't work more than they had to, and no one wanted to be rooms full of big meetings, lots of people, no decisions made, just other meetings scheduled, and so it didn't feel very productive. That I was accomplishing very much, even
Yeah.
though I accomplished my mandate. And when that was done, I was quite happy to make the decision to move on. And I decided that I wasn't going back to client side, and I wasn't sure I wanted to put myself through agency side. So I had scored a job at an agency, and I was still looking around, and I reconnected with someone I'd worked with at a big agency 20 years prior. And I thought, oh, maybe she could be my new business partner. And so when we met, I suggested that this is what my business idea had been. So to answer your earlier question too, the idea that I had was about 80% of what Collective IQ is now. I thought we'd do a little bit more managed services where you could have an outsource creative department, but not have to invest all of it in-house.
Right.
So that was more where I thought the staple of business would be, and then we could get to the higher level creative on an ad hoc basis or a project basis. Anyway, so I showed her my business plan, drew it out on a sheet of paper, talked about it, and said, okay, well, you know what, I'll take a job with you, because she'd applied and was about to take a job at my ex-clients where had last time I'd worked in an agency side, my client had been. And so I said, well, let's take a job together, and if we can learn to be partners on someone else's dime, then maybe we can, within 2 to 3 years, quit and start our own company. And so we did that in just shy of 2 years from when we started there. And we weren't enjoying what we were doing at that place. It wasn't growing the way that in the plans that they had promised us. So we weren't really having anything pivotal for our own portfolios and resume to show. So we started focusing on what Collective IQ could be. And I built all the infrastructure and had everything all set up. So the day we launched, we were already ready to go. And so I kept that job until I had too many new business meetings that I was running out of excuses and dentist appointments to say I was going to. And then,
How many grandmothers have died?
well, no, she did fix it. We both did. And we started with two big clients, which is not small projects to start with, but still we got in with two big clients that have massive procurement departments, and yet we got in them based on people
Procurement.
that we knew. And our timing, even then, like, even though now a lot of people are trying to do what we're doing, or are doing what we're doing, no one was really breaking the model at the time. And I had now so I'd been on agency side and then client side, and a client side I had tried out. So an agency side I kept taking while I was looking for my new business person, taking different jobs at different companies so that I could round out all roles within an agency so that I then know how to manage those areas well. And then I went on client side and tried out my theories from the client side perspective. So by the time we launched, I knew it was a solid solution. I just need to find the clients.
And so, I mean, like you said, you had it sort of day one was sort of 80% baked with a certain degree of certainty, recognizing market forces, et cetera, things evolve. How did you, maybe you didn't, but I'm just curious about oftentimes friends and family, the ATM model, which is anything for money, like it's about revenue in the door first, we'll figure it out. How did you navigate that and perhaps avoid, or at least try to avoid some missteps in pursuit of revenue?
It's a really good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I would say, did we have any missteps? I'd say that the missteps were more how much effort we put in trying to get pieces of business. I'd say we were optimistic about everything that could come in and work too hard on some things that were clearly probably not the right fit. I don't think we were that strategic about our new business. We just kept working our relationships really well. And when I say, I didn't think I could do new business, like the two accounts we won, which were Coca-Cola and Deloitte when we started, one was my business partner brought in one, and I brought in the other one. I
Right.
was already doing some consulting work with Coke, so and the relationships were strong enough there that they were willing to take a gamble on trying
Mhm.
us out because they liked what we were doing. Well, so missteps, yeah, I can say my biggest misstep was having a business partner, really.
And you no longer have one?
No, only the first not even quite 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. I've had partners in the past. It's never worked out, and never say never after even I'll call it loose collaborative partners where we're, like presented to the world that we're the same entity. Mm, didn't work. And so I have been reluctant to, and I've watched my brother's an entrepreneur. He's had partners. It's a marriage. And
I think it's
I
harder than a marriage. I'm not saying I've been married as well.
yeah,
I would say that it's very hard to make sure that you're both truly on the same page.
yeah, line. And if your risk thresholds aren't the same, a whole variety of factors.
Correct.
But sometimes we can fall, I don't want to say complacent, but we can fall into this groove of being reactive to opportunities that are coming in just naturally and organically, because if you're well networked and, connected to some degree, plus you have a known history to people, but there, that's great, but there's no consistency with that. You don't know that every month you're going to just naturally have these inbound leads. So how do you motivate yourself to stay on top of, I don't want to say prospecting, but just continuing nurturing your network so that opportunities keep presenting themselves?
Um, I'm still trying to figure that out.
Aren't we all?
I now for the last 6 years,
Mhm.
I am the new business person. I
Right.
am that person nurturing the business. I still have people that are managing our accounts, have their own relationships with our clients. Most of our clients are long term, and we tend to get along well and stay for a while. I think that um, I I think at this point, and I'm sure you can say this for yourself, like there's a point where when it's your own business, at some point you get up, you have to brush your teeth, you have to eat breakfast, you have to do X for your business. And it's not
Yeah.
like work personal, it just becomes part of who you are. So you go to your kid's baseball game, you schmooze with the person sitting beside you, you meet with someone you used to work with, you schmooze with them, and next week you have a project that they're recommending you for or they're asking you to help them with. Like it's keeping in touch with your peers.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I've done some periodically. I do LinkedIn and social selling training for salespeople in financial services and other sales teams. And I often say, you're at a soccer game on the weekend with your kids. The irony is that on the sidelines, you don't talk about soccer or you don't talk about soccer all the time. Suddenly your conversations veer off into what do you do during the week? And next thing you know, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. So look for these sort of unusual points of connection, even in a social context. But one of the I wanted to touch back on is, like you said, sort of 80% certainty of what the collective would be at the beginning. You had a partner, that there's a transition there. When you look at where you are now, how close to the vision or how different from the vision is it? Or is it still, the vision still evolves?
no, same. I think it's probably the most sure I've been of anything. I think because our core values are my core values. I just have to live being me every day and inspire and run a company that we all believe in the same things. And I've surrounded myself. That's the beauty of collective IQ is that there's over 300 of us that all have the same value system and all have the same priorities. And in terms of how we treat each other, the kind of work we want to be doing, the way
Yeah.
we're going to work on things. And so I think it'd be the same question. I think if you ask someone like, why do they have friends and how do they, and do they have friends that are
Mhm.
you evolve and change to a
Right.
point, but I've just been very selective about who is in our roster and what clients can really benefit from the relationships that we can bring and the solutions we can bring. So there's definitely, I would say the missteps, not so much, but the learning on those, how to choose those relationships has been really key. So that's been the biggest thing that I don't think I had worked out at all. So I'm going to say that 20% is the how do we just keep doing it and tweaking the way we're doing it a little bit better. But it really hasn't changed fundamentally. Like we're doing the same thing we're doing from the beginning, which is building solutions, custom solutions for our clients by assembling the right subject matter experts to work collaboratively together with our clients.
Well,
And
keep going. Sorry.
and I think that the way we work with them has tweaked a little bit. We were virtual for 9 years before everyone went virtual during COVID. I think during COVID, because everything was so volatile, We took on some pieces of business that were probably not, we didn't scrutinize as heavily about whether they're the right fit for us or not. And that would be where we could have gone down a path and changed and take a 9-degree turn, but I managed to root us back to what the core of what we do. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I completely understand the part about like your values have remained unchanged. It totally makes sense. But have the services evolved in any way, or the industries that you focus on evolved in any way since the inception, or relatively unchanged?
Unchanged.
Okay.
It's broad because we service in we work in all sectors other than pharma. And we've avoided pharma altogether, and services have changed as technology has changed. So, when we started the company, I didn't think we'd been running lead gen arms that do full lead gen packages with teams running that. That's an arm that I think evolved as technology evolved and needs evolved. But I think because of the nature of having the top level SMEs, we're all relevant enough to keep moving as the technology changes as well. So yeah, no, I think that that's the shocking part to me. As I said, 9 years later, and I couldn't work in any single agency and have the same types of things over 9 years. I'd say that the work has changed a little bit because the industry's changed. The money isn't there. That was there when we're all doing broadcast. There's less. We're not getting the same type of budgets. No one is, except for the odd brand. For really big things that we all used to spend on broadcast and print, and those innovative solutions, the type of services you and your company do, and some of the things I do has changed, but we've just evolved with it. No different than we did when we were agency side. Fundamentally, the difference is we're just more nimble at it.
Well, talk to me a little bit more about that. Where having to do more with less. Did you like change processes? Are you leveraging tools, different methodologies? What's that?
Yeah. So again, my the whole part why I liked the process work was working out what tools and what technology is available to keep improving the output or the efficiencies. And so our core tools that we started the company on and our infrastructure is the same, except instead of we started with Skype for Business, and we had a different server set up, cloud server. We quite a few years ago switched to each of those out. And then when Teams finally evolved properly out of Skype for Business, we then retired a lot of our overall use of Zoom. We used a little bit into Teams, but all the same infrastructure for how we run is the same. It just there might be a better app that does it. Like we were in Proof HQ for collaborative for reviewing work. Now there's an alternative to that because Adobe bought it and Workfront took over. And if you don't have work, you can't have Proof HQ on its own anymore. So, but always trying to stay on top of what's out there. And then in terms of tools, like we've had AI in our company for years, long before everyone started talking about it. And it's just in my mind, and again, I come from traditional art direction where pre-Photoshop and then Photoshop filters, where like all of a sudden you could click a button and have a shadow on something, which was pivotal at the time when that came out. I want to say how long
magic
ago
button.
And I look at AI as the same thing, except that it's wonderful. Like some of the things, the automation that we've been able to implement is so much more efficient. But it's sort of just taking it in stride, like every other tech that we've put in, because if we sit still, then we're irrelevant.
Well, I don't know if this came up when we spoke previously, but someone I know who's an industrial designer by training, but he's a bit of a futurist and focuses on strategic foresight. He's written a book about AI. And I was at the book launch and I asked him what he thought the impact of this methodology, these new tools that are evolving at a rapid pace. I said, do you foresee a day when industrial designers will be replaced? And he said, no, because you still need that expertise derived from experience and education so that they can look at a design and know that it is credible, viable, in a sense, worthy of praise, or that it is, quality. And I'm wondering if that resonates with you as a creative when you think of design and art direction.
100%. And go back to the Photoshop example, which Firefly can do now and make my life so much easier. I'm not on the tools as much as I used to be myself, other than I just try and keep up with them, but it's so hard because it's happening so fast. But the core basics of, even from having to be that, I look at it now more as the people that have the ability to think and to curate or to conduct. So I think AI is the orchestra as well as people in the orchestra, and the ability to curate that content or to guide it where it needs to is the most important thing. So if you're just a head down doer who isn't a thinker, I think that's where the changes are going to be most those people be most affected. But if you're really good technically, and it's been like that for years, is even this, studio production artists, if they can keep up their technology and they're that much efficient and faster, and those who are really excited about the tech run with those things long ahead of time before anyone pushes them to have to do so. I just see it as a tool, no different than, I'm going to go back to the analogy of Photoshop filters. Like, I remember, it's going to really date me when I say this, but I remember when we all used to be in Quark before we were in InDesign in Adobe.
I remember Quark Express.
So Quark had this really great feature that I still haven't seen yet. And I apologize if I'm off base because I haven't been using InDesign that often recently.
That's right.
But where you could have a campaign. So let's say you had 10 different formats of you have a poster and an ad and a banner ad or whatever, and they all had the same content in them. And you could link the text and the content. So you could make the change on one. And this is a long time ago.
And it would cascade to the others?
It on all of them because it worked like a folder with a bunch of assets. So all the tabs, and tabs, it does tabs, but not the same way where the content was linked. So you could change it on one and change it on other ones, and then you go back and tweak. Well, now that's available with other AI tools now that roll things out, but then the AI can guess where you need to put that headline went up, but someone should still go in and have that eye go, no, I need to tweak here, or this needs to move, or the emphasis is not quite working now that it's this format. And so we were doing that in the 90s with software that could do that. And so in my mind, I don't feel threatened about it all.
Well, let's close with this one then. If you had to tell your younger self any words of advice, because it sounds like now you're really truly living your values, but I'm just curious, if you had to tell your younger self any words of advice, what would it be?
Do it sooner. You don't need anybody else.
Well, that's a great way to close things.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Low Production High Value Show. Be sure to give us a rating and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out Volterra at volterradigital.com to learn more about how they can support your social media marketing.